Howdy, I'm Jacob. I'm the guy who's doing all the reading. But before I start though, I just wanted to give you a couple of content warnings for this section, which is Chapter 2 and Chapter 3, just because it's important and I want you to know what you're getting yourself into before you start listening. For this section, there's just going to be a couple instances of abuse, drug abuse, and addiction, and I want you to know about that. So, know about that. If you find yourself out of your depth, or if you just don't think you're going to be ready for that, go ahead and put the episode down, or go find something else to listen to. I totally understand. In addition to that, I also wanted to thank Rob Morton for being a fantastic writer and for making the beautiful music that you've probably heard underneath of these episodes. In addition to the book, God Forgive These Bastards, there's also an album by his band, the Taxpayers, and I would tell you to go listen to that on Spotify. In addition to that, I want to point you toward Microcosm Publishing, which is where you can purchase the book, in addition to the album. Also, check out all of their other books and zines that they house in addition to all of their stickers and everything else. When you do order something, go ahead and also pick up one of their catalogs. They're fantastic. But yeah, that's everything that I need, so let's go ahead and get into the reading. Thanks.
Jim Luck entered the baseball season with a reserved optimism, following peak years which he could not reasonably maintain its record-breaking pace. He would turn 50 years old in June, and felt mortality tap him on the shoulder. Murray Silver, Tex Luck. Chapter 2, Luck and the Volcano. Most folks believe that Abner Doubleday invented the game of baseball in Cooperstown in 1839, but they're dead wrong. The truth is this. Doubleday had a friend named Abe Graves who, when Doubleday died, decided to cash in on the growing popularity of baseball by writing a letter to the Mills Commission, which had been created by Congress to investigate the origins of the American pastime, stating that he had been there when Abner Doubleday wrote down the rules of the game. The Mills Commission took his word as fact, even though Doubleday had never set foot in Cooperstown or even made any such claim. But Abe Graves wouldn't have much time to celebrate his fabricated role in the history books. Not long after, he murdered his wife in a fit of rage and spent his remaining days in an asylum for the insane, ranting to anybody who would listen that he'd been there when baseball was invented. Now, the fact is that nobody invented the game. It just slowly evolved into what it is today from similar overseas games. But if you want to give credit where credit is due to a real American hero, then give it to Alexander Cartwright. Cartwright wrote the Knickerbocker Rules, which said, among other things, that you couldn't hit a runner with the ball to get him out. Before that, people were getting their teeth knocked out, going home with black eyes, sometimes even dying from concussions. It was a brutal game back then, and Cartwright saved a lot of lives with his new rules. But believe me, modern baseball can be a savage thing too, and the first time I played it, I learned that lesson pretty quickly. For my 5th birthday, Granddad had got me one of those plastic gloves they used to make back in the 60s, and he took me in the backyard and told me something I never forgot, even when I started playing college ball. "Henry," he said, "you can throw that ball as fast as you want, but if you don't keep the hitter surprised, he's going to get it every time. You've got to throw it fast, but slow too, and sometimes you even got to hit him if you want him to take it seriously." And with that, he threw the ball as hard as he could right at my face. The ball busted my lip open, blood started pouring down my cheek, my chin, and my neck, and I burst into tears on the spot. Mama came out, and him and her got into a big fight, but I see now that it was a good lesson. Something I remembered, at least. Years went by, and I developed into a fairly decent ball player, largely thanks to Granddad's instruction. In the fall of 1977, I was accepted into Georgia Tech on an athletic scholarship, full ride, and it was a good thing too because my grades sure as hell would not have. The head coach's name was Jim Luck. No joke, I thought. Shoot, with a name like Jim Luck at my back, I might as well give it a shot. Coach Luck had come a few of our high school games when he found out that a 17-year-old could throw a 90-mile-per-hour fastball, and I guess I impressed him enough for him to take me on. To be honest, it was 88 miles per hour, but when word spreads in the South, it can exaggerate quite a bit. See, they didn't have radar guns readily available at every high school in the country like they do nowadays. So me and Frank and Alice had gone out to the highway where there were a bunch of those big speedometer signs that tell cars how fast they're going, and I just threw ball after ball until it registered on the sign. 88 miles per hour, it said. A lot of people call bullshit on that, but they say those signs couldn't pick up a baseball, but it's true. The story I'm going to tell you is a pretty famous one. You might have even read about it in the paper, or maybe even seen it on the television if you're the type that follows sports. It's the story of a near-perfect game, and it's also the story of how everything went to shit. Here's how it started. I was 2 years into my college ball career. We were fighting for a spot in the playoffs, and Luck told me, "Turner, I don't want this to affect your pitching tonight, but there's going to be some major league scouts at the game. You ignore that, though. I want you to throw like it was a high school game, one that you knew you were going to win." Thing is, of course, when you tell a kid to ignore something, the last thing he's going to do is ignore it, and I guess that was the point. Luck was putting on the pressure, seeing how I played with it and whether I had the guts for the playoff games. Now, I ain't telling you this because I'm proud of it, and I sure as hell wouldn't recommend it, but I've been taking speed since I was 16, and it seemed to help my pitching. All kinds, whatever you could get. And by the time I was 19, I was swallowing pills between innings in order to keep my heart rate up. Trouble was, while it made my fastball the toughest in the league, it made my changeup, well, unpredictable. I had a difficult time calming myself down enough to throw it how I wanted to, which was both good and bad, I guess. You can't pitch a ball you don't expect, just as much as you can't hit a ball you don't expect. The game started off smoothly, and Virginia be damned, by the fourth inning I hadn't let a single hit go by. It was strike after strike, giving the boys enough of it to taste, but not enough of a taste to take a chunk out of it. I was on top of the world on the mound, and it felt like a laser beam from my hand to the catcher's mitt. Al Jackson. He was a senior, and probably the best hand behind the plate you could possibly have. I once saw him catch a pop fly and then run down the third base runner in under 10 seconds. The ball was back to the pitcher's mound by the time you could say, "The hell just happened?" So it was me and Al, having a religious experience between the two of us. He would set 'em up, and I would knock 'em down like they were cold drinks on a hot day in a dark bar. I don't know how it happened, shoot, I don't even remember most of it happening. But somehow it was the 8th inning, and I was begging Coach Luck to leave me in so I could pitch a no-hitter in front of those major league scouts. That would clinch it, I figured. They would come to check out this Mickey Mouse college organization, hoping something they could work with, but instead they'd see a record breaker for the history books. Coach Luck was a little apprehensive, though. "Turner, you're a kid, and if I leave you in for the stretch of the game, you're going to get tired, I'm telling you. Your arm ain't ready for this kind of work." He went on like that for a while, but he relented eventually because, well, sometimes we all want to believe in magic, even if you know deep down that it's the sleight of a quick hand. One thing I knew for sure, I wasn't taking my chances, at least not this late in the game. "Got to take a leak before the top of the 9th. Be back in 5, Coach." I was starting to crash, and I had to get my head straight for the next 20 pitches. I jogged off to the locker room to grab the stash in my locker that kept inside a little Jesus statue at. You know those little novelty ceramics that you find at truck stops? It started off as a joke at first. When I turned 16 and got my driver's license, me and Alice celebrated a road trip to New Orleans. We made it a point to stop at every low-down redneck truck stop from Georgia to Louisiana. The best ones had an entire shelf decorated with religious figurines. We would stash as many of them in our pockets that we could fit and walk right out to the car. Sometimes we'd make love in the bathroom before walking out with our loot, hands in our pockets, whistling like the obvious thieves we were. Over the years it became an obsession. By the time I had my own locker at Georgia Tech, I'd put together a small army of little Jesuses, apostles, crosses, eagles, hell, even a holy dragon. I'd haul out a couple of them to hold tiny bags of pills. When you're coming down from an upper, it feels a little like you haven't eaten in a while, which you probably haven't, and your body just seems like it might have been drained by some sort of invisible vampire, which, well, it has, sorta. And the shakes, man. Your hands start trembling just a little at first, and it keeps getting worse until you either take something else or sleep it off. I didn't have the luxury of sleeping it off until heading back to the mound, so I cracked open that little Jesus and grabbed a couple of amphetamine pills. Put a couple backups in my pockets, just to make sure I stayed straight for the rest of the game. It was hot on the field. kind of sick heat that happens in the South, and my uniform felt like a warm puddle of soup against my skin. You could almost see the steam rising off of people's skin, and when I wound up for my first pitch of the inning, I could feel my body turn against me. Dehydration, all that shit coursing through my veins, the damn heat. When I let go of that fastball, a sharp pain stabbed me right into my heart, like the twist of a rusty knife. Crack! The bastard laid a grounder right past shortstop, and there I was, bent over, clutching my chest like I'd just taken a bullet. With the runner safe on first, Al called the timeout and jogged up to the mound. Hank, what the hell? Where did that come from? Shit, you gonna be alright? But the pain had left just as quickly as it started. I dusted off my pants and worked the ball into my glove. Been a long day, Al. A guy's allowed to let a hit go by, ain't he? Listen, let me finish what I started. Tell you what, I'm gonna work with this next guy off the plate with just a few brushes and take him off with a split finger. Now, get back to that plate. I'm gonna need your help to end this. Next up was this scrawny little guy. Andrews was his name, I think. And while he couldn't hit long, he could run fast. And the last thing we needed was someone like that on base with a one-run difference. I threw it hard, right at his elbow. He jerked away from the pitch in outrage, dropped the bat, took off his helmet, and gave me a "what the fuck" kind of gesture. But when he got back up to the plate, he was considerably farther away from it than before. It was perfect, and I was feeling the adrenaline from the pitch and the pills, so I got up to do it again. But then I paused for a second, lowered my head, made the sign of the cross on my body. God, forgive these hands of mine, I mumbled to myself. I gritted my teeth real tight, named it right at his head. Took a long wind-up this time, and I threw it hard. Thwack! Bullseye. The guy had taken an 80-mile-per-hour ball right to the helmet, and he was squirming on the ground in pain. The umpire called a timeout. It took a few minutes, but Andrews actually got up and took his place. Now, there was a meeting on the mound with the powers that be, Jim Luck, Al Jackson, and an absolutely furious umpire. You keep that dirty shit out of this game, kid. I've been calling games for 15 years, and I've seen 3 people die from a bean to the head. And if you think I'm going to stand by and watch you kill a man for your own win, then you've got another thing coming. Coach Luck calmed him down, and I assured him that it had been an accident. But when the umpire stormed away, Luck was just as pissed off. I'm taking you out, Turner. Give me the ball. He held out an open hand. Coach, listen, Yeah, I hit that kid, but I got it together now. One more out. That's all I need, and that's the game. Give me the ball, Turner. Coach, listen, let me make you a deal. You give me one more pitch, just one more pitch, and if it ain't a strike, then you can take me out. I've got a 2-hitter on the line. Those scouts are out there watching, and if you take me out on the spot, they're going to think that both me and you don't have the guts to see this thing through. One pitch, that's all I'm asking. Just one more pitch. Luck dropped his arms to the side and let out a deep, long sigh. He shook his head in bewilderment, like he couldn't believe what he was about to do. Okay, one more pitch, kid. You throw anything other than a strike, I'm not only pulling you, but you're going to sit out for the entire goddamn playoffs. With that, he walked slowly off the field, looking almost defeated. The stupid things people do in the name of hope. So there it was, the precipice. Almost like leaning over the edge of an active volcano and debating whether or not you should just jump on in. It reminded me of the first time I drove a car. I was 12, and I'd gone to the bar with Granddad like we did sometimes. The bartender would give me shots of grenadine, and I'd chase it with a Coke, and I'd get to act tough and listen to all the stories they'd tell. That night he'd got out fighting drunk pretty early in the night, and we got kicked out. When we got to the car, he took out his keys, handed them over, and just sort of swayed back and forth while staring at me intently. You gonna jump into that volcano or walk home like a fool, humiliated? I rubbed the dirt out of my eyes and settled into my stance. Next up was Ramirez, big guy, strong hitter. But while I was sizing him up, Al started jumping all around, screaming at me and pointing to third. I came back into focus, but by the time I realized that the runner was stealing third, I was too late. I got the ball to third, but he was already dusting himself off, giving me this smug smile that I would have smacked right off of him if we had been in the street instead of in a stadium. One more pitch, I remember praying. Lord, I know I ain't been all that good, but if you give me this strike, then I swear I'll walk a religious path for the rest of my days. Just one strike, that's all. That's when it hit me. This bastard is going to expect me to brush him off or give him a fastball. So he's going to be ready for it. But shit, if I lob him an easy changeup, then he's going to swing right past it. It was a gamble, but what audacity. This was the kind of stuff that people go to see baseball for. The kind of stuff you don't see every day. But first, I had to calm myself down from the pills to throw it. I took a deep breath and did a quick wind-up from the stretch. It felt like a dream, or rather a nightmare. From the moment the ball left my hand, I had overextended, and the pain in my arm was the kind of imaginary pain that only happens in the worst nightmares. I hit the ground writhing, holding onto my shoulder like it was about to come apart from my body. I'd never been in that kind of hurt before, and it didn't seem real. You could see the confusion in Ramirez's face as he started to swing too early but caught himself. He lined himself up perfectly and then, with a full, strong swing, sent the ball sailing into left field. The rest of the night is mostly gone from me. I remember the stretcher, the painkillers, the amphetamines in my back pocket getting taken, the cops, the face of a sad, defeated Jim Luck. Found out later that Pete Welzer had run down the ball in left field and snagged it out of the sky before it went over the fence. We'd won the game, got sent ahead into playoffs, but I was out for the season. Forever, in fact. And now there was an investigation into whether Georgia Tech had been supplying their players with supplements and narcotics. It wasn't so much the humiliation of getting caught or even losing the scholarship and getting cut from the team. Hell, it wasn't even the failure of it all. It was how quickly it had come down. 1 minute you're a wild animal, and the next you're shackled up with every reason to continue squeezed out of you. Into the volcano? Hell, once you're down in it, you can't never get back. That's what I say, at least. Beware, my love. Before you're much older, he'll sweep you under his carpet. You'd be in luck if you could stop it. Beware, my love, by Wings. Chapter 3. Paul Motherfucking McCartney. There was this guy I knew in the early 80s. Wouldn't call him a friend necessarily, more of an instigator that I ended up spending more weekends than I'd like to admit. Jamie Remington was this squirrely cocaine dealer. Someone you knew from the get-go you could never trust, but he knew how to have a good time, and boy, like the Willie Nelson song goes, if you got the money, honey, I got the time. It was what he lived by. If you bought the party, he supplied it, and he'd make damn sure it lasted longer than you could handle. I'd been kicking around the proverbial gutter since '79 when I dropped out of college to see what fell in my lap, and it turned out the answer was a pretty little redhead and a sharp nose with these crazy green eyes. The mother of my daughter. She was a college girl, and she was way too good for me. You want to know how I met her? Much as I hate to admit it, it was thanks to that rat Jamie. He had this house out in the suburbs of Atlanta. Lord knows how he got it. Inheritance or drug money. And he was having a party there on Halloween weekend in the year 1982. Me and some friends got all jazzed up and took a bus out to his place, ready to see what kind of trouble we could get into, and when we got there, Jamie was already a wreck. I don't know what he took or how much, but his eyes were as red as the devil's, and he was jumping around and talking like a man on fire. He wanted to do something. Didn't know what, but he just wanted to go. Man, when he saw us, he lit up like a bomb and ran right over. Henry goddamn Turner! Listen, kid, listen. We gotta go, and I'll tell you why. It's because this night ain't big enough for me right now. I'm feeling the size of a goddamn earthquake, and we gotta get out of here before I blow. You gotta see something. Come here, real quick now. It's around back. He took me around the side of the house, past the well-manicured shrubs and immaculate lawn, and there, parked right in his backyard, was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. What do you think, right? Got it off some sucker in Florida, this old fuck who didn't realize what he'd had and just practically gave it to me like a goddamn idiot. He had some sort of disease, some kind of cancer, you know, and those painkillers I got last month? Well, you wouldn't believe my luck. And he traded me this thing for the rest of my pills and $1,000 cash. Sometimes I can't believe how good I have it. It's like the fucking universe wants me to win. Am I the Messiah? Hell, I don't know, but sometimes it sure feels like it. Go on, hop in the damn thing, Hank. It was a '55 Mustang convertible. dark red, almost bloody looking. Now, even in my altered state, I could never condone Jamie ripping off an old man that was dying of cancer, but this was just too good. At that point in my life, nicest car I'd ever driven was an old beat-up Studebaker with a radiator that hissed like a feral cat if you took it over 30 miles per hour. And I'll be a son of a bitch if I'm going to turn down the opportunity to ride in that piece of art. I climbed in the passenger seat. So where are we going, Jamie? The moon and back? Take it easy on me now, you know I'm a virgin. Better, Hank, way better. And quit lying to the ladies about being a virgin. They can smell a dog like you a mile away. You ever been to Athens on Halloween? Those University of Georgia girls get crazy as hell, and I'll tell you this right now, you and me gonna make 'em even crazier. And with that, he turned over the engine, screamed like a dying man, and peeled out of the yard, leaving the rest of the partygoers bewildered and confused just as to where their host was going. But that was Jamie. Didn't mind leaving hundreds of fucked up strangers at his unattended house to their whims. He only cared which direction he was going to kamikaze his plane next. Which made me his co-pilot, I guess? Hell, we were too messed up in those days to fly anything anywhere. Maybe the eye of the hurricane is a better way to put it. We got there sometime around midnight, and by God, he was right. This was a party. Thousands of drunk revelers all dressed in the craziest shit imaginable spilling out into the closed-down streets, confetti raining down, angry, joyous jazz music pouring from the corner bars and us, a couple of coked-out ravenous monsters ready to devour anything in our path. First thing Jamie did was ask where the nearest house party was at. That's where the real fun is, he said. You get a group of people out of the public eye and they'll do goddamn near anything. Or buy goddamn near anything, at least. Jamie had brought the mobile pharmacy with him, and he was ready to hawk off what he could to some of these college kids. We ended up at a packed house just off campus, where there was some cover band laying down the hits. They were pretty good, too. I walked into the living room and sat down next to the loveliest stranger I'd ever seen, right as the band launched into a slow rendition of My Girl. It was like a scene straight out of a movie. She turned a little, gave me that sly smile, and inched a bit closer. Now, her name, it's as mysterious to me as her eyes. Sarah? Jane? But her face, God, I can see that as clearly as the Mona Lisa. Pointy little nose, deep green eyes, long red hair falling across her face, and that goddamn cat costume. That goddamn cat costume. I swear, everybody at the party was dressed as some sort of sexy princess or half-naked ballerina. But she had on this baggy, full-bodied cat costume made out of shag carpeting. She looked like a goddamn monster, and I loved it. I was nervous as hell and blurted out the first thing that came to my mind. You ever do blow? I didn't know what else to say, and I'd figured I'd probably shoot my chances to shit, but to my surprise, she just smiled and laughed a little. You know, I've been wanting to try it. Just never had the chance. What's it like? I hear if you do too much, your heart will just go pop and explode right in your chest. That true? That ain't true, right? Is it? Because I ain't no prude, and the way I see it, you gotta try everything at least once if you want your life to, really live, you know? Anyway, hey, sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. What's your name? My name? My name's Henry. And that's when the rat came in. Hank, you ain't introduced me to this lovely thing yet. Darling, move over. My name's Jamie. Jamie Remington at your service. And is it just me, or is this party fucking dead? Like, one minute you walk in and the band's laying down some serious goddamn funk, and the next, it's fucking Wings. Paul fucking McCartney's motherfucking Wings. The hell is this world coming to when the house band needs to play Wings to get things going? We need a pick-me-up, you and me. And you know any quiet place around here that we can be alone? She was never one to take shit from some small-time hustler like Jamie, but she was too southern and too polite to do anything but indulge his nonsense. She stood up and nodded to me first. You gonna come too, Henry? I shrugged. Why not? Great. Follow me, you two. We walked down a dimly lit hallway into a small bedroom near the back of the house. The off-white carpeting on the floor was cluttered with clothes and college textbooks, and the air felt stagnant and dirty. An ashtray had been spilled, and the crushed cigarette butts that were scattered near the doorway made the place seem like a cheap hotel room. As Jamie locked the door behind him, he gestured to the mess. Classy place. She smiled and shrugged. It's my friend Brenda's room. Well, not friend, really. Brenda and I have hated each other since the second grade when I accidentally threw up on her new coat and she cut off my ponytail with a pair of safety scissors. Some friend, I laughed. Yeah, and then in high school she stole my boyfriend and made out with him in front of the cafeteria. So I told everyone that she'd blown the gym teacher to pass phys ed. Now Jamie started laughing too. And get this, in 11th grade she ran over my cat on the way to school. So I went to her house and left an anonymous letter in her mailbox saying that I'd been watching her for the past year, and that the next time she left the house alone I was going to cut her throat with a knife just to watch her bleed. We stopped laughing. Anyway, our families have been friends for years, so we still see each other all the time. That's how we ended up at the same college. Jamie had taken a mirror off the wall and was laying down 3 white lines of powder on it. He passed it to her and smiled. A toast, then, to Brenda. She rolled up a dollar bill and snorted the biggest line off the mirror. To Brenda, may she burn in hell. An hour later, we were on top of the world. Jamie had wandered off to sell drugs to the next party, leaving her and I alone, and the cocaine coursing through our veins made the conversation come easily. She had grown up in South Georgia as the only daughter of a mechanic, and had spent her youth under the hood of vehicles brought into her father's shop. By the time she graduated high school, she could piece together a blown-out engine using scrapped parts and have it running before the end of the day. When I told her about the new car Jamie and I had driven on the way over, she wasn't impressed. If you want to see a car, follow me. We walked around the side of the house to the detached garage and she opened up the door. A black 68 Pontiac Firebird hardtop sat there, first of its kind, with the classic Coke bottle styling. It looked almost like it had never been driven. She threw me the keys. Go on, let's take it out. By this time it was about 3 in the morning, and the party had begun to die down. The old 53 highway that led into Russell was pretty empty around that time of night, and would be a good place for a joyride. I remember when I was a kid, Granddad used to take me out to this diner a friend of his owned in Russell called Max's. The first time I watched a man die was there. We were eating dinner and the guy at the table next to us just keeled over and popped. Heart failure. After they checked his pulse and determined that he wasn't going anywhere, we finished our dinner and put the body in the back of our truck. No point in having the family charged for an ambulance when there was nothing they could do. So we drove back to Atlanta on the 53, dropped off the corpse at the hospital. I hadn't been back to Russell since. Her and I hopped in the car and left Athens in the direction of Russell in a hurry. The moment we reached the winding highway, I hit the pedal, and we went careening down the poorly lit twists and turns at 60 miles an hour. Now, those old Firebirds didn't come equipped with radios yet, but I happened to have a little battery-operated transistor radio with me and got a pretty good signal considering its size, so we switched it on and cranked the music. The first station that came was Gloria Gaynor's I Will Survive. God, I love this song, she said. I nodded. Yeah, it's okay. Just okay? All right then, stud, what kind of music you like? I shrugged. I can listen to anything with a good beat. If it's good, you know? The one thing I don't get is Wings. I mean, the Beatles were great, sure, but that Paul McCartney is such a pompous cocksucker. She laughed and turned toward me. That's funny. Your friend was just complaining about Wings earlier, wasn't he? I'm with you. Is there anyone that actually likes Wings, or is it just something that they're required to play on the radio because Paul McCartney's in it? I eased the Pontiac around a tight turn, and when I hit the accelerator to speed back up, the steering column became tense and the engine froze for a moment. Shit. I slowed the car to a reasonable speed. When was the last time you put oil in your car? I hate to say it, but I think I just felt the engine freeze up. She gave me a hard stare. Whoa. Who said anything about it being my car? What? What the hell are you talking about? She grew silent for a moment, as a sly grin came over her face. I told you before. I never liked Brenda. I paused and thought about it, and then broke into a huge smile. Well, shit. I ain't never stolen a car before. You know what? I say we drive this thing into the fucking ground. We whipped around the next turn and I floored the accelerator. The Firebird made it back up to 60. When we hit 70, a loud knock began pulsing from under the hood. Then, at 75, the steering column froze up again, forcing us to pull over to the side of the road. With the transistor radio still going, we began laughing our asses off. I popped the hood and we walked out into the dark night air. A storm was about to break overhead. I hunched up my shoulders underneath my jacket and checked the dipstick. It was bone dry. There ain't a drop of oil left. This engine is toast. She shrugged and lit a cigarette. Then, with a loud burst of lightning, the skies opened up into a cold, pummeling rain. We stood there, frozen in the flash storm. I watched her take a long drag from the cigarette and walk towards me, red hair plastered to the side of her face like she just stepped out of the shower. She blew a thick plume of smoke from her lips, ran her fingers through my hair, and pulled me into a smoky, wet kiss that reminded me of campfires and sex. And as the rain fell and the Pontiac hissed, the DJ on the radio transitioned into the next song, Band on the Run by Wings. We kind of fell into things, her and me. After a few months, she dropped out of college and we wound up in Reno with a couple of cheap rings on our fingers, married by a drunken, cross-eyed minister, and still very much in love. And I'll tell you this much. I may not remember her name, but I can tell you the exact size of the wedding dress that we stole from Goodwill. And I don't remember the name of the drive-through chapel neither, but I can describe to you with absolute clarity the way her long red hair would fall over her eyes when she laughed. Not long after that, Savannah was born. It was the best few years of my life. Believe me, I never stopped loving her. I always hated myself more and more every day, but I never stopped loving her.
And of course I know you could have done much better, and I know that I must have been a real fucking nightmare. Some rotten man. Nobody's savior, your oldest friend.